Grow Space is going to be a vertical farm in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I want this series and all of the videos on this channel to help you learn more about agriculture, about climate change, about all kinds of stuff. Vertical farming has definitely had a lot more attention to it and a lot more press in recent years, as in like the past 10 years, and this is because of how much better of a method it is of growing. So I want to talk about in this video exactly what that means, what vertical farming is, and how it works. Alright, so I don't really have a proper table, but I'm going to try to make this work. I want to talk about vertical farming, just the basics of it, and I think that this will be pretty awesome eventually, but right now this is just a bare bones building with nothing in it, but hopefully you'll see it through the series. This building will hopefully become an incredible vertical farm. Vertical farming is a method of growing crops that instead of growing something horizontally or over a large field, you're growing it on top of itself. An example would be in a building or in a greenhouse, where the crops are actually on top of one another. So this tower right here takes up a very small amount of space. We say it's 20 square feet, but it's really less than that. And this tower can grow 44 plants in these little ports right here. And this just makes it much more efficient than traditional agriculture space-wise. Vertical farming should reduce water usage by as much as 97% compared to traditional agriculture. Another benefit is that we can produce crops year-round. In traditional agriculture, our lettuce is grown in the other side of the country, so California, Arizona, Mexico, and those are very far away places. So what happens is the lettuce needs to get shipped here after all that time, and we actually just don't get as much lettuce here during the winter. This building is also going to be a own little climate bubble. So this building's temperature and climate will be perfectly controlled to make the perfect conditions for lettuce. Also, all the produce can be grown in a local area. So instead of you needing to get your lettuce from California, Arizona, or Mexico, where your lettuce currently comes from, it can come from right down the road here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. In all different kinds of vertical farms, you'll see typical features that are in all of them. So the first one is water flowing. So the water is stored somewhere, in this one in a reservoir underneath it, and is then pumped to the plants. And that is in all types of vertical farms, you will see that kind of concept. The other thing you'll see in almost all vertical farms is artificial lighting sources. Now we are in a building, but you can grow hydroponic and aeroponic produce in a greenhouse. And in those cases, you don't actually need lighting, but you can add supplemental lighting. And that means that the lighting during the winter, specifically, will be a little bit extra light. So in almost all vertical farms, you'll see extra lighting. In vertical farms, you also see complete climate control. I already talked about this, but I like to mention it again in a little bit more detail. So our building will be completely climate controlled. So it'll be the right temperature, humidity, right levels of CO2 to make it so the plants have the perfect environment. Another common thing you'll see is an irrigation system. In this one, it's aeroponic, which means that the water flows over the top and the roots are not exposed to water, but they're instead exposed to air with water flowing over them. And in this system, the irrigation is the massive tower, and it simply brings the water to the plants. The last thing you're going to see in all different kinds of vertical farms is some kind of nutrient system. So some way that the plants get the nutrients they need, like nitrogen, phosphate, nitrates, magnesium, all different kinds of stuff that they need. The way that most systems do this is that they're actually just in the water. So we supplement them artificially, but in some kinds they're done naturally, like through an aquaponic, where it comes from natural places like fish poop. There are multiple different kinds of vertical farming. Here at Grow Space, we're going to be doing two majorly, which is hydroponic and aeroponic farming. But there are more kinds, which I'll talk about a little bit in this video. So the first one is aeroponic farming, which is this tower right next to me. So in aeroponic farming, there's a reservoir still, and the water pumps to the top of the vertical farm, which is this tower, and it flows over the roots of the plants, which are in these ports. And the roots are just in air, so it's not like they're in water like we'll see in hydroponic farming. In hydroponic farming, you'll see that the crop is actually in water, so it's in a layer of water of some kind. That water could be moving, it almost always is, or it could be stagnant in like a pond. So you almost always, when you hear people talking about vertical farming, they're normally talking about hydroponic farming. These systems have the same general principles as all vertical farms. They have the reservoir, which in our case is on the bottom here. From the reservoir, the water is then pumped up to each shelf. Each shelf has 4 troughs in it, which each hold 18 crops, which means that this style is the most space efficient, simply by the amount of lettuce you can fit in 1 square foot of space. Another concept which we won't be doing here is aquaponic farming. This is where you're essentially using fish. So what it is a pond with fish in it. And in aquaponic farming, compared to just traditional farming, what you see is you have fish. So the nutrients are actually just fish feces, which are in the water, and then that is where the plants are in. Those are the main kinds. There's some couple other kinds, but I won't get into those in this video. You can grow pretty much anything in a vertical farm. Now we're going to be growing lettuce and leafy greens almost entirely. Some other crops that you can do is stuff like basil or herbs like mint. You can grow those hydroponically as well. We will be probably doing this a little bit, but nowhere near as much as the other leafy greens. Now it's not fair to talk about this without mentioning a couple of the issues behind it. One of the big issues is just the energy inefficiency, just generally. So we're taking a free resource, the sun, and making it cost something with LED lighting. So it's not necessarily the most direct approach, right? So it's a little inefficient in that way. What do we get out of that inefficiency is we get better environmental practices, we get better lighting, of course, it's more consistent, and we get much more controllable environment. Again, and as I already touched on a little bit, is you can't grow everything vertically. Like some things you might never be able to grow in this way, like corn or wheat or most grains. It just doesn't really make that much sense, just the way these have to be grown and how space intensive these plants are. It might never be realistic to grow these vertically. And especially when compared to other farms, like traditional farms, scaling these becomes very difficult because a lot of times the smaller practices don't work on larger scales and vice versa. So you kind of have to shift the way that you do, you kind of have to shift the way you grow produce. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This is the Grow Space building. Just wanted to mention that here. Right now we're about to start painting it, so as the series goes on, you'll get to see our building coming together. We are hoping that we'll be able to actually start growing stuff here by the end of the year. So right now it is late August, so it'll be, we look forward to seeing us here with plenty of lettuce.